See if it says it's going. Here we go. So recording is happening. I am Matt Navar, and this is the FileMaker beginning training class for development. I've been a FileMaker developer for 30 some years, since really the very beginning of FileMaker, and it's been my career for a significant, for almost all of that time. So at some points in that 30 years, I've done other things, but FileMaker has been a common thread, and it's been all I've done for the last, I don't know, 15 or 20. And just with all that time, I love, love, love the platform. And my favorite thing is to share it with other people. And so I'm really excited that with Direct Impact, I get to teach this class and share the things I love about this really cool platform. So before we do introductions, I'm going to dive right into some of the content. And there's going to be two tricky parts that I'm going to really ask you guys to think and engage. Well, all of it's going to be thinking and engaging today. But the parts of it are going to be importing data and like looking at the field structure. And then the other part that's going to be more thought-provoking is going to be relationships, which is going to come to after the first break. So I still go back to when I first learned how to define relationships, and it was vexing for me. So it's definitely something you should give yourself some time to understand if you don't already. We're going to dive right in to importing data, and I'm going to ask you all to follow along. In your folder of beginning training files, you have some folders like sample solutions. That's kind of what we're going to build. So we're going to build something that looks like this. But I'm actually going to start from file new, and we're going to create this as we go through the class. Part of the class you'll be working on your individual computers, and part of it will be working on a FileMaker server that's part of this training environment. So to start, I'm just going to close this file, and I'm going to start a brand new database, which you guys can do as well. So if you launch FileMaker, you'd go to File, Create New, and then it gives you some sample files of what we're going to do, but we're just going to make a blank database just completely from scratch. And then we'll call it training, or you can call it really whatever you want. Now, when you start from a file from scratch, it automatically makes one table with the 5 default fields that it puts into every table that FileMaker creates. But what we really want to do is we want to start by importing data from Excel. And there's two Excel spreadsheets that come with this. One of them is called customers, and that's how we're going to start. So we could go through and define the whole table of what we're looking at, but FileMaker makes it easier for us by allowing me to import the whole spreadsheet and automatically define all the fields to match what these fields are. And so here's how I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to ask for one of you guys to share your screen to repeat these steps so that we make sure we have it all going. And if we need to even have a couple of you do that, I'm definitely good with that. So you go to the File menu, to Import Records, to File. Notice we have a couple of other options, but for now we're just going to look at File. And then we choose in our beginner training spreadsheets folder, the one called customers, and then just choose it. So at this point is where you really kind of need to slow down a little bit, because this screen normally would import data into the current database that you're already in, but it has one other really cool feature, and that's up in the corner here, is it can, if you click on this little arrow on the very top right, it can make a brand new table. So at the bottom of that drop down is one thing that's not super obvious, but this is one that I use all the time, and it makes a whole new table, and it automatically makes all the fields, but it only makes all the fields if I also say use as field names. And so the first row of that spreadsheet are going to be the names of all of my fields. And so when I do that, those two little clicks, so the one here is new table, and the other one is use as field names as opposed to data or exclude. Then I can actually click on the little arrow to see what my data looks like. But if I just click import, it will create in an instant all of this data, converting it over from Excel format to FileMaker format. Now, right now you can see it looks different because it's in a form view, but if we click it onto table view, it looks the same as an Excel. So you can even like go here and modify the widths of everything. You can change the order of columns. So it's kind of like Excel. It's nowhere near, it doesn't have the same casual structure that Excel has. In other words, you can't just like pop in the middle and make a new row that's blank like you can in Excel. But there's a million things that FileMaker can do that Excel cannot, and those are the main things we're going to focus on. Maybe not a million, maybe more, maybe less, I don't know. Okay, so the three views are the table view. The default one we started in was form view, and that's where I want to spend our time for at the moment. And then there's another one, which is list view, which won't really make any sense on this one because we haven't modified the form to be a list format form, but we definitely will get to that. Okay, so having just done that, that's the first import. I'm going to do that one more time, and I'm going to import the other spreadsheet in that folder. By the way, the spreadsheet does not have to be open. And I'm going to just go through those steps again, and then one of you guys can volunteer and share. So File, Import Records, File. This time I'm going to choose Work Orders, Open. Up in the top right, I'm going to say New Table. And in the left, I'm going to say Use as Field Names. And then when I click Import in the lower right, I'll get a new table imported with 1,400 work orders that came in. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing and have one of you guys volunteer to share and go through those steps. If anybody has not already done them, because I asked you guys to follow along, then you can share. Who wants to volunteer? So Phil, we see your screen, but I don't hear you. There you are.
Sorry, it's my first time using this program.
No worries.
So yeah, that was really convenient. I didn't know that through importing records, you could just make a new table right away. That's really convenient.
There's actually even easier ways to do it. You can even drag and drop into FileMaker to do it, but these are the
wow.
This way is a little bit more direct, I think, and more step by step.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so perfect. So you click that in the top right, you made a new table, and then you've chosen to label your fields, and then click import.
I've already done it once, so I'm not sure what would happen if I do it again.
That's actually a good lesson. So if you've done it more than once, then here's what you do to fix it. Oh yeah, you're already comfortable with layout view to make it wider so you can see things. Because you notice that at first it showed a question mark there because it was too, the field was too narrow to show the data.
Mm-hmm.
So having done it twice, you kind of lead direct into the next part of the lesson that I wanted to show. By the way, if anybody didn't get that, definitely speak up and we'll make sure we get those steps. But while you're thinking about that, go to the File menu.
Where do I find the files that you were talking about?
Oh, they should be on your desktop in a folder called Beginner Training Files, and then a folder called Spreadsheets.
Okay, I haven't seen those.
You don't see them?
I'm looking.
Can you share your screen?
Either.
One of you.
I had to find mine through, like, when you go through the import records, you press File.
Oh, yeah.
And then you want to go look in, and then you want to go all the way down and go to Shared Folder Workstation G, and then it'll have your beginner files in there.
Yeah, there was supposed to be. Okay, that's good to know. There was supposed to be a link on each of your desktops to the beginner training folder, but it didn't. I couldn't actually check them because I don't have access to them all. So who's still having a problem with it? Can you share your screen?
I do not have the files.
Okay, Carla, can you share your screen?
Either.
And Susan, you don't either?
No.
Okay. Well, if we can figure it out for one of you, hopefully the other one will have it as well.
I can share my screen and I can kind of show here.
You could, but you actually, so yeah, Faith, you found it in another place, right?
Yeah, so check and see if you can see my cursor here. Like click on there and then click in the training files.
I'm not seeing your screen yet.
I don't see my screen? That's weird. Oh, there we go. Okay, sorry about that. So
still don't.
There we go.
There we go.
Okay, yeah. Can you see my cursor here? Just go down.
Shared folder beginner. Yeah, okay.
And see if you have that. And then I was able to get the files through that way.
Okay. So Carly, do you see that?
Here, I'll share mine and then you can.
Okay. Yeah, let's do that. Okay, so for the moment, just quit FileMaker.
Okay.
And then on your desktop, I think you see there's another little window off to the side there. Oh, sharing just stopped.
Do this one.
Okay, so on that looks like, I'm not sure if that's your desktop or the training environment. Because there's a bunch of other icons there that I don't have. Open up the folder icon down in the bottom bar.
Sorry, you were frozen. What did?
Oh, and the very bottom bar next to Internet Explorer and Chrome, there's a folder icon. That's the desktop. Click on that and see what we can see. This looks like your desktop. You're like your normal PC and not the training environment.
How do I get? Oh, okay. That's probably what I'm missing then. Then what? How do I get to the training environment?
Through the remote desktop client.
This is my first day, so I have.
I can see if I can have someone from our team help you. So I don't want to stop the class from going, so I'll ask someone from our team to see if they can reach out and help you get that working while we're going. So until then, maybe you can follow along and actually, since you do have FileMaker, you can at least create a new database. You just won't be able to have the sample files.
Okay.
Susan, do you have the same issue? Do you have the environment going?
I do have FileMaker, but I do not have the training files, is all.
Okay, can you share your desktop?
Oh, you don't want to see it. Let me look.
So the little up arrow icon, share content, right next to the leave the meetings is how you do share content. So I think, let's see, Alan, I see is back. Susan, I'm not sure we're seeing your screen though right now. We're seeing Carly still.
Does she have to stop sharing before I can share?
No, you can just click share and it should just take right over.
Sorry, I'll stop sharing. I was just trying to figure it out.
Yeah, but it looks like you're actually making really good progress.
Yes.
Okay, it looks like it's trying to get started.
Okay. It sometimes takes a bit for that to start. Yep, I'm not seeing it yet though. I'll let you keep working on that, but I'm going to continue with a little bit more of the presentation while you guys are working on that, and then we'll go back to sharing and bouncing back and forth on things. Okay, so the next thing I really wanted to show is once we import the data for customers and work orders, there's going to be some stuff in here that we want to start making changes to, and so I wanted to introduce the manage database. So if you go to the file menu to manage to database, this is where you manage the structure of the database and where we get introduced to concepts like field types, and then later today, relationships. And then also, So this managed database has 3 tabs. So tables is where you list the master set of all of the tables that you have. And so if you do something like import one table more than once, this is where you can just click on the one that you don't want and delete it. So I'm going to delete the one called training demo because that one got created automatically when I made a brand new database from scratch, and I don't need that table. There's nothing in it. And so, for example, if you imported work orders twice, you can just delete the one called work orders 2 or whatever it's named. Okay, when I click on, if I double click on one of these or I click over to the fields tab, either way, it gets to the same place. And I want to talk a little bit about field types. So, and I'll ask you guys some questions that you shouldn't know the answers to. Take good guesses and tell me what you think the answers would be. So FileMaker has a bunch of different field types. What do you think a text field type can store, and what's unique about the text field? Who has a guess?
It can store text.
For text?
Yeah.
What type of text? What are the limits of what a text field can store, do you think?
I'm not sure. There's probably some character limits, but I don't know.
Yeah, character limits is definitely an issue, but the limit is insane. So it actually stores, I think it's 2 gigabytes of text per field per record. So basically, far longer than any book ever written. The text of that will fit into one block of, one row. It'll also store any kind of data, numeric or text, and it'll store fonts and font sizes and color and underline and styles and formatting and things like that. All get stored. It's indexed and sortable and searchable, so all the data in every text field can be searched, no matter if it's way down in the far bottom of the list. And so text field is kind of your most common type of field that you have. And then a couple of other ones we have are number fields. And by the way, we can see our field types down here in the bottom corner. And so we have text, number, date, time, and timestamp, container, calculation, and summary. So what do you suppose limitations of a number field would be?
I have a question about that. So
Yes.
is it integer only? So there's like no floating points or no decimals?
Such a good question. It actually does store decimal data,
Okay.
and it stores 64 digits to either side of the decimal point. So
Okay,
very,
cool.
very large numbers. The number field can store a number larger than the number of particles in the known universe. Very large numbers. And also, like if you're doing scientific work, it can store extremely small numbers. However, it'll only store 1 decimal point. So like if you put a number in like an IP address or a phone number or something like that that has formatting, it has to be a valid number. So a number like 503.123.4567 is not valid because there's 2 decimal places or two decimal characters in the string.
In terms of like an IP, would that have to be stored as a text then?
That's a perfect example. Yes, an IP would have to be stored as a text in order for it to be valid. So, and that brings up kind of another little implication of that, which is sorting. So if you sort a text field, it's going to sort as text. So 1, 10, 100, 11, 12, 13. But if you sort it as a number field, it will sort as a number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then 10, 11, 12, 101, what down the list. And so IP addresses, for example, would not sort the way that you might think based on the number of characters in that first 3 digits. So that's kind of text and number. Date, time, and timestamp are all closely related. So who has guesses as to how those work? Date, time, and timestamp, and what those are. A more direct question is, what is a timestamp?
I think a timestamp is both the date and time of the record.
Yep, that's what it is. It's actually, when you see it in FileMaker, it's date, space, time. So 9/, 8/2021 space 12:34:56 seconds AM or something like that.
Is that the date the record was created?
Well, yeah, you actually have an automatic timestamp field that can be created. So for example, if I wanted to create a timestamp field called created, Z created, TS for timestamp, and make it a auto enter, which is one of the next things I wanted to show. So this is a timestamp field, but right now, if I just save it and go to my layout and display it, and then make a record, it doesn't get populated because I didn't do anything about it. But if I go back to my managed database and say double click on the timestamp field, and the next area that we're going to be looking at after we finish talking about the different field types is auto enter calculation. We won't talk too much about these other 3 tabs, but let's start with auto enter, and I want it to automatically enter the timestamp that the record was created. For the moment, I'm not going to prohibit modification, although we normally would prevent a timestamp field from being modified. Okay, so now if I do that and I make a new record, it's going to automatically put in the time of the creation of that record. And so if I keep making records, you can see it's got the seconds in there for each one that I make. Now, if I go back to the records that I imported previous to this, there is no timestamp in it. And so I don't know when they were made. And so I have a couple of choices to populate this after the fact. One of them is to do a replace command. This definitely gets ahead of things. And this is like a copy down function in Excel. And then I could just replace it with the current timestamp right now. But another way that I could do it is I can just import my data again. So before I do that, there's a couple of other fields that I usually make. So Z created timestamp and like Z modified timestamp. You can follow along on this if you want. And then modified is really similar to created, except I click on the modified, and I'm going to prohibit modification on that one so you can see how this works. And then I also sometimes do Z creator and Z modifier. So Z creator would be not a timestamp, but text. And that would be the account name. So the creation account name. Who was logged into the database at that time. And I'll put those fields on the layout here as well. I'm using some keyboard shortcuts to duplicate fields, which we'll get to later. So none of these are populated right now, and the ones that I said that I couldn't change. So if I went in here and said, "Oh, Donald Wallace," and I'm just going to change this, Donald Wallace Jr. When I edit that record, it's going to then automatically populate the timestamp with when that was changed, so that gets stored. Okay, I talked about how to populate fields like this after the fact. I'm going to delete all my data, record, delete found, and go to import records, and then do the same thing again, except this time when I import customers, I'm not going to choose make a new. I'm going to import into my existing table. And then there's one other option down here, which is perform auto enter options for fields during import. For example, serial numbers, creation, timestamp, modification, etc. And so now on all of the records that I imported, it puts in the date and time and the username of who I was logged in as when I did this import. Pretty cool, right? So I'm going to talk a little bit more about those other field types, and then I'm going to have someone else kind of replicate those steps that I just did. By the way, Carly, Susan, are you making progress on getting access to the environment?
Yes, I did. I got it figured out. Thank you.
So I'm not finding the email that had the link to that in it.
That's Susan. I'm not seeing who's talking.
That's Susan. Yes.
Okay, Susan. I'll see if I can have someone reach out to you.
If they could send me an email, then I'd be more than happy to load it
Okay.
up. Thanks.
Let's see. Martin is doing that. Okay, I've asked Martin to reach out to you and send you the files that you need. So let's go back into Manage Database. And you can follow along with this part on just any file on your copy of FileMaker. So we talked about number and text, and also date, time, and timestamp. I didn't get to kind of the main thing I wanted to show with that, which is there's a funny little thing that's happening behind the scenes in a date, time, and a timestamp. And that is how FileMaker is storing the data. And it stores a date as the number of days that have occurred since 1/1 of the year 1. So basically 2,000 years. Let's see, Martin says he sent that email yesterday, so maybe you can take a look at your emails you got then. Oh, he's sending it again, great.
Okay.
Susan.j. Yeah. So even though FileMaker is storing the date as an integer, it's displaying as a date, a normal date. So for example, let's add another field in here called like customer since, and I'll make that as a date. These all have keyboard shortcuts too. And if I go in here and add the customer since field on my layout, I can put a date here, like, this has been a customer since, 4/7 of the year, I don't know, 1992, a long time. So when I do math on this date field, I can actually, if I want to calculate something like, for example, 30 days after their customer since, or maybe a better example, like an invoice date, you can just do, invoice date plus 30 days. And if it's not paid by then it's overdue. And so when we get to calculations, which we're going to be getting to in a little bit, you'll be able to see some of that stuff work. That's date. Time stores the number of seconds since midnight of today. So if I just have a straight up time field, it's that's actually what's happening, and we can do math on it. As an integer, the number 1 is basically 1 second. And then of course it also does fractions of a second too, if you wanted to do that. Timestamp is a combination of those things, but what's really weird and cool about that is timestamps stores the number of seconds that have occurred since 1/1 of the year 1. So that would be a very large number of seconds. So this created date that's displaying as 9/8/2021. If I got this as a number, it would be the number of seconds that have occurred since then, which is a large number. Susan, did you get the email?
Yep.
Okay, great.
Thanks.
Okay, good. So you should be able to follow those steps and catch up then. So that's a little bit of a jumping the gun on that, but I think that's kind of important because we're gonna play with how those work, and I find that useful. Okay, the other types of fields that we have, and date, time, and timestamp are super similar to each other. We have 2 weird ones, and that's calculation and summary, and then another one which is more standard, which is container. Container can store anything that's not any of these other types. So for example, a container field can store a photo, a PDF, a movie, another FileMaker database, any document of any type, up to like a couple of gigs. So very, very large documents, but it cannot store like a copy of a Star Wars movie in 4K. That's like a 10 gig file, and that's bigger than FileMaker can store. But it can store a link to that. So you can actually still, build a database of movies or things like that. So I think the upper limit on that is, I think, 4 gigs of what it can actually store. Okay, the 2 special ones are calculation and summary. Calculation is cool. Let's build one. So we have a field in here. Let's see. We have the customer name, the manager, the salesperson, which looks like it's just the first name of the salesperson. And I really want to know the first and last name of the salesperson. So I'm going to add another field. So the one called salesperson, I'm going to call it sales first. And I'm going to make a new field called sales last, which will be a text field. And so now I'll have the first name and last name of the salesperson. I'll put them next to each other. And I'll add that to my layout. So I'm using control drag to make a copy of the field. And so now I have my 2 names. So John Smith is the sales rep. And I also have another John, which is John Jones, right? Mark Richmond, Steve Winwood. You have to be a certain age to know who that is. Okay. So now I have these full names, but if I wanted a field that showed the full name of the salesperson in one spot, that's where you would need a calculation. And so we're going to make that one really quickly. Back to modify database, and I'm going to make a new field called sales full. And its type is going to be calculation. I'm going to do this really quick and have one of you will volunteer in a second to redo all of these steps. So sales full is going to be sales first, and then this is the calculation window, which we're going to be spending lots of time in, and the ampersand, which is how you concatenate 2 things together, and then sales last. But in between that, I actually want a space character, and so that's just in the quotes. That's just a space character in between 2 quotes. And then the other critical thing that you have to notice about this is down in the bottom left, the calculation result defaults to a number, but this is going to be a text calculation. So the end result of the calculation will not be a number field, it will be a text field. And you can see that you can also have other types of calculations, including containers. So you can actually make a calculation that results in an image, for example. Okay, so that's my calculation that I've built. And if I put that on the layout, I will see the full name of the sales rep. Question: if I go into the layout and I try to edit the name here in the calculated field, will it let me do it? Like if I go up here, for example, and say Stephen, it will certainly let me do that. But if I go here and say Stephen, will it let me do it? Who has a guess?
No, it won't.
It won't. And it can't because a calculation field is derived and you have to edit the source field. Okay, who wants to volunteer to redo a few of the steps that I just did, which includes creating a timestamp and creating a calculated field? Any volunteers?
Sure, give me a second.
Okay.
So I was actually trying to follow along. I've been trying to do this before, so I kind of understood what you were saying.
Yeah, so
And
look
I
at that.
did everything.
You've got a timestamp field called ZTS. It's a timestamp. So if you double
Is there
click on
any-
it, we should see.
Is there any reason for like the Z, or is that just like a naming thing?
It's a naming thing. So
Okay.
I do that so that it sorts at the bottom of the list. But it doesn't otherwise really matter. It's just a convention.
Okay.
So you
I'm
did a
not
great
sure if
job
you
on that.
mentioned it, but the prohibit is like something you also want to click,
You definitely do on.
so no one can edit that.
That's right. Yeah. So I see that you haven't made the calculated full name yet.
No.
So let's go through those steps and have you do them. So first of all, the field called salesperson, click on that one and we're going to modify it. So when you just click on the field called salesperson, it's going to say, do you want to save your other thing? Oh, it didn't do that. So change the name of the field to sales last, or sales first, actually. Because the data in this thing only has the first name, and then click change. Okay, so you just made a new field, which is a super common thing that a lot of people have done. So change the one called sales first that you just made. You have to do this, you have to do it in a really specific order. Okay, you could, there was a, you're going too fast, and I'm trying to make things a little bit easier for you and show that there's really easy ways for you to recover from your, from things that you do that you don't intend. I'm not going to call them mistakes because it looked pretty intentional. Okay, click change, not create. Okay, now just delete the word first and type in last. And then even though you're clicking on a field, you can just click create and it will just make a new one. And now you have a first name and a last name field. So just click OK in the lower right and put it on the layout so we can see that you have two fields. It's already there. And so this is Steve. So make up a last name for Steve. And go, and then let's make our calculation field next. You're going to go back into Manage Database. And now we're going to make a new field, which is the calculation. Okay, after this, we're going to take a little bit of a pause and actually do introductions because I wanted to dive into the intense content right away when our brains were fresh. But I need, this information needs to settle in. Okay, so make a calculation called sales full. Over on the right, the type you can see, scroll down to calculation. And then click create. Now this comes up to a different window that's not the one we saw before. And this is the ubiquitous calculation dialog box in FileMaker. And this is a screen you're going to know and love because it's a huge part of where the power is in FileMaker. By the way, almost all of the power in FileMaker lies in two areas. And that is this calculation dialog. And the second part of it is scripting. Scripting we get into quite a bit in the intermediate and advanced class. And scripting allows you to really write code that does procedural logic. Calculations can do a lot of things like calculate invoice due dates, add up a bunch of numbers, come up with all kinds of other math to determine things. Like, for example, if the customer's terms are net 30 and the invoice is not paid, then show a specific text message that says how overdue they are. However, if their terms are net 45 and the invoice is not paid, a different message. However, if the invoice is, if their terms are, due on receipt, then it shows a different kind of a message. So all of those kind of if-then statements we're going to get to in calculations. Okay, in this case, though, it's a super simple one. It's just the sales first name and the sales last name. The easiest way to do it is to double click sales first. And then over on the right, so you've got sales first and sales last there. And in the middle, you need an ampersand. And that is the character to connect them together. And there's your space quote spate and then another ampersand. And so that's your full string of your calculation. If you're missing one character there, like delete one of those two ampersands, for example. And then in the lower left, the calculation result is a number. We don't want that. You know what, though? For the moment, leave it because I want to see what happens. And then try to click OK. So this will tell you you can't save it because you have a math error. And so if you put that ampersand back in, no, keep it as number because we're going to break two things at once. So if the ampersand is back in, now it's correct. Now the math is correct. And then click OK and save it. And then look at where it says sales full. It's question mark. Make it wider. And let's see what it shows. It actually does show the name, but do a search. Go to find mode, and then type in John, and hit enter. Why can't it find it?
I'm really not sure.
It's because it's a number field. So it's actually showing you the data normally, because FileMaker will evaluate a number field and display it as text. And so it will sort of look right, but it's not right. So if you go back to manage your database and change the format of the calculation to the lower left corner where calculation result is text, and then click OK. And then let's see, then click OK again. Okay, so now do a find and search for John. And you're going to get all of your Johns and also your Steve John. Okay, so that was a subtle point, but when you get the type of your calculation wrong, weird things will happen. And so that was basically that lesson. So two things I want to impart to you guys. One of them is some skills to actually do things, which we've got a lot under our belt already. Importing, creating fields, renaming, making simple calculations. And then the second set of skills are like, oh, Matt talked about this one thing in training. I don't remember exactly what it was. And so basically it's like a feature of FileMaker that it can do that all you really need to do is remember that it can do it. By the way, can you go back to sharing? Because there was one other thing I wanted to review.
Sure,
to remember that it can do it, and then you can either ask someone or research it or Google it or whatever, and then you can quickly find the answer to figure out. And that's one of those things that I just showed is the type of thing. Okay, so you had created these other fields for your creation modification, but they're not populated yet. So go ahead and delete all of your records. I saw you start to do it. So the records menu to delete all. And then the file menu to import. And we're going to remember some steps here. So customers. And then we're not going to choose the feature to make a new table.
Yeah, we already have it.
Import the data as it is.
Do we use this one?
Let's see, from oh yeah, I'm not seeing. Oh yeah, customer number. Yeah, the fields look like they match perfectly. State to state. What you're not seeing there is the new fields that you've created because they don't match up to anything that's already there. But that's fine because you've got the checkbox checked in the bottom that says perform auto enter. And so those new fields will get populated. So if you just click import, all your new data will come in. And then all your 4 fields that you made in the top right there for created, modified, creator name, modifier name, they're all populated. Okay, what field will not be populated?
I guess the sales last, because
exactly.
Yeah, that was not part of it.
That's right. So like if you search, if you click on, go to find mode. I'm going to show you another great tip. Click in the sales first field and hit Control I. This is a field index. This shows you all the data across the entire database for that one field. Excel, to my knowledge, does not have this feature. And it's really a cool feature. That will show you the 4 different names of your sales reps. Actually, one of them is just salesperson. So if you do that same thing again in the sales last field, it should just be empty because we haven't put anything in it yet.
Mm-hmm.
So you put one in, but then we deleted it. So if you go in and in one record, you put in Smith for Mark, and then go to the next record down, and then put in Jones for some different Mark. And then now click into the sales last field. By the way, you don't even have to be in find mode. Click in sales last and hit Control I. It shows you your 2 different names. And it's automatically just builds that index as you work. Okay, take a little breath. Lots of stuff we just covered. Let's kind of briefly do introductions because I really want to know what each of you is looking to get out of the class, and then we're going to take a short break and come back and do more. We're going to add a whole bunch of other layers of interest to the things we just covered. So why don't you stop sharing? Also, if you want, it would be great to turn on video so we can all kind of see what each other looks like, at least for this portion. And I would love to know what you guys are looking to get out of the class. Who wants to go first?
I'll go. So I'm an intern at Direct Impact Solution in web app development, and
Okay.
so I've been signing them to take this training, this course, because I will work with FileMaker in the future. So yeah, that's about it.
Good. Well, congrats on the intern job there.
Thank you.
It's a good company, and I think you're going to like it. And yeah, obviously, if you're doing mostly web stuff, you're going to be doing that. But it's primarily a FileMaker company, so you're going to be doing a lot of FileMaker too. Who wants to go next? Carly, maybe?
Yeah, I'm in a similar situation. I was just hired as a programmer analyst, and I was signed up to take this course and learn FileMaker.
And what company are you working with?
Kubota Materials.
Oh, okay. So other people there are FileMaker people, and they knew that you needed to learn it, so they stuck you in the class?
It's all very new. I'm not sure.
Oh, okay. Well, welcome. So I forgot to ask also, Xavier and Carly, I'll ask you too. What's the main thing you're looking to get out of these 2 days?
Well, I'd like to get a grasp of how FileMaker works and what I can do with it. So, yeah.
Okay. Carly, what about you?
I'm hoping to get a good understanding. I know they want to update their current use of FileMaker to a more modernized one because it was made like years ago. So
Yeah.
if I could do that.
Okay, great. So we'll try to cover then some of the newer, more exciting features, and also kind of what I think of as best practices.
Okay, great.
Al, how about you?
Oh, I guess I'm not muted. I think I'm a fish out of water here. I'm the principal of a high school up in the Northwest Territories. We have a few existing FileMaker programs that we use, and I'm just interested in maintaining and updating them. As well, there's a couple of ideas I have for creating new ones, and more specifically, I'm not concerned with the importing of data and the fields. I just want to be able to learn a little bit more about how to generate reports if I pick and choose certain fields, how to build a report to do that. And in fact, I'll give you, I'm interested in coming up with a database of interview questions, and then depending on my find, I want to pick all the questions reviewed to science and then build, print an interview based on that. So I'm not going to be heavy into it. I want to maintain what I have, and I want to play around with maybe a few ideas.
That's a solid example of something we can really do and play with. And so like, I think I can actually use that idea of the interview questions as part of the stuff we do later today in the class to demonstrate kind of calculations and creating things and also like report generation. So the structure for the class, is fairly limited. We don't really try to do too much, but I try to always kind of overachieve a little bit. So part of that stuff, like building new skills so that you can do things well. And then also these are the things that FileMaker can do, kind of getting into that. So that'll play really well into that. Susan, how about you?
I work for the Residential Facility Ombudsman Program, and we use FileMaker as our database for all of the individuals that we serve. Mm-hmm. And when I was hired a couple years ago, I was told that because nobody had signed up to do the FileMaker stuff, that became my responsibility. So I've been kind of trying to figure out how FileMaker works, and now I'm signing up to really find out how it works. I've done a little bit of around, but I'm not having as good a luck with the training materials as I do using our own stuff. So
Yeah, and so your database was professionally built by us at AppWorks
Right.
years ago, and so yeah, you have kind of a mature system. So kind of coming into the middle is good. I certainly would recommend you also take the intermediate class after this one, but this will give you a good overview of what FileMaker can do in the beginning.
for that one as well.
Okay, good. Who wants to go next? Faith or Philip are the two other ones on here?
So I'm here in Winnipeg, and I was just hired as a new database administrator. So I have a background with Excel and Postgres. MS Access and PostgreSQL. So
Okay.
I'm just not familiar with the UI on FileMaker. So I just was put into the training course so I'm just not like futzing around with it without
Got it.
Just knowing where everything is.
So one of the things I'll try to do as we go through the training to address your needs is to use terms that you might see for things in FileMaker that are different than other programs. So for example, in most databases, they refer to things as columns and rows.
Yeah.
And that's not the way the normal term that in FileMaker, it's a record and a field.
Yeah.
And so those are the same thing. So I'll try to give some translation so that you can get some of that. Let's see, Phil.
Hey, so I'm in Ontario, and I work for an advertising agency. Basically, we use FileMaker for a lot of things like timetables, and honestly, I don't even know the extent of it, but I know it goes very far. We have a lot of apps that are in-house, and I'm just the new guy. So
okay.
Before this class, I've already watched a lot of YouTube videos, but they just recommended this course, and here I am.
Okay, great. I hope you've seen some of my YouTube videos. I made a bunch of them over the years.
I possibly have. I've bounced around a lot of just random
There's some really good ones. Yeah, Chris Ippolite is another really good one who makes a lot of them. Okay, well, welcome. Did I get everybody? Is there anybody I didn't talk to? All right, good. Let's take a couple-minute break to get some tea or whatever you need to do, and then we're going to come in and continue with more fun features. So 5 minutes or so.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. Anybody have a question before we dive back in?
Yes, now that we have a moment, can you let me know how to open up the files that you were talking about?
Yes. Can you share your screen and we can take a look?
Now would be a good time. Oh, wait 1 second. Okay. Can you see it?
Not yet. Did you click share desktop? There we go. Aha. Over on the left, I see a folder called beginner training files.
Yes.
And in there is spreadsheets.
I was trying to like figure out how to open it. That's why I have the test. So which one is it?
This looks like a shared folder that all of you guys are accessing the same folder. So some other databases people have created are in here.
Yes.
So the two that we started with were customers and work orders, the ones with the spreadsheet icon.
Mhm.
So double click on FileMaker over on the left. There you go. And then just say File New, Create New, and then choose blank, the middle icon. Over on the right, there's resources, blank and convert. Yeah, choose blank.
Mhm.
Put it on your desktop. So click desktop over on the left.
Pardon?
Oh wait, you're going
Going
a
too
little
fast. Okay.
past. So click create again in the lower right.
Yes.
And then over on the left, you see quick access desktop libraries.
Mhm.
Yeah, choose desktop and then give it a name. So right now it says untitled. So at the bottom where it says untitled, choose training DB or something like that.
Okay.
And then click save, and that will make a brand new from scratch file. And then you can just click OK. And now we're going to do the import again. So go to the file menu to import records to file. And then now you can choose beginning training files over on the right there. Double click that and then click spreadsheets. And then customers. So this is a really good review of what we did. And then there's those two special things we have to do. One of them is over on the right, top right, where it says current table training DB.
Yes.
Change that one to click on the little triangle over on the edge and change it to new table at the bottom. Okay, the second thing that you have to do is in the top left where it says 1 to 48 and then just below that it says data.
Mhm.
Click on that and change it to use field names. And that tells FileMaker to use the field names.
Okay.
The
Instead of
top
the
row.
F1, F2.
That's right. Instead of using F1, F2. And actually, if you did F1, F2, it's not the end of the world because you can just name them after the
Okay.
fact. It just saves you that hassle. That's the only things that you need to do. Now you can click import.
Okay, and then I was following for the rest of it. So.
Yep, you could repeat those exact same steps for work orders if you'd like. So do basically the exact same thing. Make a new table for work orders, and remember those 2 extra checkboxes to change,
Okay.
which you could do now or later. But that's it. You're now caught up to where we all were.
Awesome.
So
Thank you so much.
Pardon?
I was just saying thank you for catching me up.
Oh, sure. There's the other stuff that you could do, like the calculation fields, the creation, stuff like that. But that's not critical that you do all those steps, but you just because you know that those fields are there.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
we're going to be making more fields and doing some other play as we go on through the next couple of hours.
Okay, great.
Anybody else have a catch-up question?
I just got stuck on the timestamps.
Oh, okay. Let's take a quick review of it if you want to share your screen.
Sure.
And then we'll go and then we'll continue with content.
And I also kind of made a mistake on the first customer's file, so I just redid it. So now everything fixed. So yeah, but even then I was still stuck on the timestamps. I just missed where the tools bar is. That's all.
Mhm. Okay.
Yeah, so I just kind of got stuck in the middle there. So, well,
Okay.
so that should be created. So this is what I have that I remember from.
Yeah. So go to browse mode and let's see how that works right now.
Okay.
I kind of skipped that, but FileMaker has 4 modes. So browse mode where you do data entry. So make a new record. Control N, or that one, the button.
Okay.
And so, yeah, your field is working correct because there's your created and modification timestamps are working. So that's one mode is browse. The second mode is layout, Control L, and that's where you were a second ago. That's where you modify the form and move things around. So hit Control L so we can see that.
Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah, edit layout also gets you to layout mode. But all these things have keyboard shortcuts. FileMaker offers 2 or 3 ways to do many different tasks, not anything, but many things. The third mode that's important is preview. And that's a print preview mode, which is less important as time goes by because we print less often. And instead, the usual way to do things these days is to make a PDF and email it. That way, it doesn't have to actually go into paper, but sometimes it's super important and useful to have paper printed. Let's see. The fourth mode is, we've also covered a little bit, is find mode. And that you can get to from the keyboard shortcut Control F, or click find in the menu bar right there. And the important thing to note about these 4 modes in FileMaker is they all look the same. They all have the same fields on there. So as you switch back from one of these modes to one of the other ones, so layout, browse, find, and preview, they show you the same fields in the same order. This is a unique feature of FileMaker. Other programs do not work this way. Nothing on the web works that way. Excel works that way a little bit, but other things just don't. They don't connect the front end to the back end, so that the raw structure of the data to the way it looks very frequently. So, but it's one of the things that FileMaker has always done, and one of the things I love about it. So, I saw one other thing. Can you go to Manage Database? So the File menu to manage, and then in here, click on the first tab called Tables. Yeah, so you've got customers and customers too.
Yeah, I didn't want to delete customers because I don't like. That's the mistake I made in the first place. I deleted something. I'm like, okay, no more deleting. So I deleted something in customers. It was bad. So I just made a whole new customers too.
Yeah, I say we delete customers and clean up after ourselves. So this is one of the things I kind of wanted to show is FileMaker's really, really good at being able to delete stuff after the fact. And so I'm going to have you walk us through it. Click on the top customers one once, and then click delete. You double clicked it. Go back to the tables. That's okay. By the way, you cannot delete a table from the fields tab. You can only do it from the tables tab.
Okay.
So if you click here and click delete, it'll give you a dire warning.
Yeah.
Because this deletes, don't check that box yet because I want to show that separately.
Sure.
If you click delete, this will delete the data and the table itself. Gone. Now click to the relationships tab, which we haven't looked at yet. And you can see that there's a blank customers. So click that one and delete it, the one that says table missing. So one click on it and then just the delete key or the trash can at the bottom, either way. And then this will say the same thing. Okay, now if you go back over to the tables, the one called customers 2, we can now actually just rename to customers. So you can click on it once, and then down at the bottom, just delete the 2. And then what you have to do here when you make this change is you have to click the change button.
Okay.
By the way, right now it's actually called customers space. So click after that last character. Oh, it looks like you did get rid of it.
Okay.
Yeah, because I thought I saw a space character there for a second, but it's not a good idea to have a space trailing or preceding any field name or table name or anything like that. So it's kind of, if you can, it's good to be clean on that. Not the end of the world, but better. FileMaker fields and tables and scripts and relationships and pretty much everything supports upper, lower, special characters, numbers. Actually, emoji is fully supported in everywhere in the program. So you could name things whatever you want to name them, and they can be very, very long names. There are some exceptions. You cannot have a field name that is named a protected word. For example, you can't have it start with a number. So for example, you can't have a field called 123 because that looks just like the string of a number. So certain fields, if you want to have a name a certain way, you have to have the numbers appear at the end of the field. So for example, if you had like sales rep 1 and sales rep 2, you cannot have the fields be called 1 sales and 2 sales. They have to be called sales 1 and sales 2 for it to work. And then a few other protected words are things like all the function names and math characters that FileMaker requires. So for example, the plus, minus, divide, multiply, all the common things like that cannot be the start of field names. Those are kind of obvious, but and they rarely really come into play, but they sometimes do. Okay. Go ahead and click OK on that. And I think what I'm going to do, we're going to now talk about the next tricky thing, which is relationships. We're going to start soft and kind of get into this. Relationships are how you connect one set of data to another. I'm going to have you continue sharing rather than me share my screen, which I like because it sort of forces me to slow down. Because I definitely go too fast sometimes, as you probably may have already noticed. If you go back to the manage database, so file manage database, there's a keyboard shortcut for that, by the way, Control-Shift-D. And then you click on the relationships tab, you can see that you have these two tables in there. So you might not have all imported work orders and customers, but I think almost all of you did. So there's a relationship that would need to get made between these two things. And we have to figure out what the nature of the relationship is. And you're already totally leading perfectly. You have chosen customer number over in the work orders table. And then there's also a field called customer number in the customer table. And before we actually forge this relationship, let's go take a look at our data. So click OK. Clicking OK saves all the work that you've done in changing the graph. For example, what you just did was just move some table occurrences around. Go to browse mode. That's Control B because you're in find mode right now. And then we can take a look at your data and just randomly click on one of those records in the middle. So now you can see in our customers table, you have customer number 44, which is Locust Science Park. And you have an email address and a person, a city, everything else. Okay, so switch layouts to a work order table. Oh, it's not letting you do that. Yeah, go to edit layout and then try clicking on where it says customers. And click work orders. By the way, the reason that it didn't do that is because layouts can be hidden. So you can disallow changing layouts from that layout drop down in the top left there. It's actually a really good feature of FileMaker to be able to hide them so that the user cannot switch layouts, because you might have some layouts that are protected and you don't want the user to be able to switch. I'm going to take a brief pause and show you actually how to do that. So go back to layout mode.
Okay.
So
Sorry about
Control
that.
L. Yeah, edit layout or Control L. And then go to the layout menu in the very top. So File, Edit, View, Insert Format, Layout in the very, very top left. You're on the top right. So and then way up in the very top, you have File, Edit, View, over to Layouts.
Oh, okay.
And then there's a drop down in there. This is your layout menu. And let's see. There's one called Layout Setup in there. And on the Layout Setup detail screen, this is where you can choose a lot of features for the layout. But one of them is the top checkbox there that says Include in Layout Menus. Now that was not checked and is not checked. And that prevents you from navigating to this layout when you're in browse mode. That's a mouthful, but if you check that box and then click OK, while you're still in layout mode, navigate back to customers. So on the very top left where it says work orders, go back to customers. Oh, and you have two customers ones, by the way. Yeah, go ahead and click save. So go change back to customers and then slow down after you choose customers in the top left. So I'm not seeing something.
Okay.
Yeah, go back to customers, the top one. Click save. Yeah, so checkbox is actually good and save. And then this one is actually deleted. This is your first customer's layout that's deleted. Let's clean up after ourselves and go to the layout menu. That same menu we were in a second ago and delete. So this is how you delete a layout. So we've saw, so when you make a table that you delete, you have to delete the table occurrence, and the layout that gets automatically created. So those are the three things you kind of have to do to clean up after you delete something. Okay, now this landed you on the second layout called customers. Click back in your list in the top left there. And now you don't have a second one called customers, you just have training, work orders, and customers. Okay, go to browse mode while you're on your customers layout. And with the change that we made a second ago, we're now going to be able to navigate to our work orders layout. So if you go to the top left, now you see work orders because we've made it visible. Okay, let's find all of the work orders for customer 44. Do a find. And then just type 44 in customer number. That's work order number. So one field down. And then click perform find. You can also just hit enter. And there's 20 work orders. So you can scroll through them one at a time using that little widget up in the top left. Yeah, that's the page widget. That this widget actually has different features depending upon what mode you're in. When you're in browse mode, that navigates from record to record. When you're in layout mode, it navigates from layout to layout. When you're in preview mode, it goes from page to page. And when you're in find mode, it goes from find request to find request. Those are four very, very different things, but FileMaker uses the same widget for all of them. Okay, so we want to make a relationship to show all of these 44 work orders, or sorry, all of these 20 work orders for this customer. This imported data already had the way to do it. How do we build that relationship? Do you know how to do it?
Yeah, no, like, is it click and, oh, it is click and drag. Okay.
That's solid. I'm impressed. So right there is a one-to-many relationship. By the way, this is slightly confusing because you have customers on the right and work orders on the left.
Yeah, I'll take care of that.
So if you change it to look like that, do you think it actually breaks anything in FileMaker? Who votes that that actually breaks things by changing the visual look? Anyone?
No, I don't think it does.
Okay, that's one vote for it doesn't break anything. Who else wants to vote?
I vote that it probably doesn't.
You vote what, Carly?
That it won't change anything.
Okay, that's 2. Anybody else have a vote?
Yeah, I don't think it changes anything.
That's a solid 3-0, and all of you are correct. The way that it looks on the graph doesn't break anything. It's just a convention. And the convention is the leftmost table is the parent and the right one is the child. So basically from generic to specific. So you kind of go down the chain. So for example, a really common relationship chain would be a customer has multiple work orders. A work order has multiple line items. A line item has multiple products. And so you might have a whole set of those relationships from left to right. And then you might even have one above customer. So you might have like a sales region. So like you might have 4 sales regions in the country, east, central, north, south, something like that. And then each of your customers falls within one of those regions based on where their headquarters is. Okay. Your relationship is created. So go ahead and click OK. And we're going to see this through and then talk about some other relationships. So switch back over to your customers layout, which you can't do from there because it doesn't have that box checked. So if you go to edit layout, change layouts to customer. While you're in this one, go to the layout menu to layout setup. Oh my God, I love this so much. Check that box. Now from now on, you'll be able to actually switch to that layout. Okay. But while we're here in layout mode, I want to introduce the concept of a feature called the portal. So we're solidly into building some layouts now. We're not just doing data structure. We're actually looking at user interface. Across the top, I'm going to go ahead and just have you keep driving because I really like this. So you see the bar of tools. You have the arrow, the text, the line, the box. If you hover over each of them, it tells you what it is. So hover over the arrow one. And if you pop there, if you wait, it says selection tool. The next one is your text tool. The next one is your line tool. The next one is your shape tool, which allows you to draw boxes and things like that. Then you have your field tool, your button tool, your button bar tool, your tab control, or also that's and some of these actually have multiples, so you can see the little line next to it. And then this is your portal tool. This is the one we want. By the way, just to continue the tour, the next one is chart, web viewer, and then 3 things you never should use. These are left over from old versions. So those 3 don't use. Okay. So choose the portal tool and then just draw a box in that big white space on the right of your layout. Down a little bit more. More. Good. So what I want to show here is I want to show all the work orders for a given customer. So it defaults to unknown. And then there's 2 valid choices here. So click back on that list. You can see that one of the valid choices is actually customer, which we're not going to choose, but we could because that would actually give us a list of all of our customers. It's sort of a self relationship. And then the second one is a related table called work orders. This database is dead simple. There only are 2 tables, but in some of the databases that you work with, you may have 10 or 20 or even 100 or 200 tables. And so that dropdown can become very complex. Okay, so you're on work orders and you see several other options, sorting, filtering, deletion, blah, blah, blah. Leave all that to its default and then just go ahead and click OK. Now, this is asking you what fields you want to display in your list. So let's just choose a few. Double click on work order number, date, and hours. Let's just leave those 3. And then click OK. And then you can see them, they're all inside the portal. So here's another thing to note. Grab the middle of the portal tool. Just click in the dead center of the gray and then move it down. If you move it and all of the fields move with it, then they're correctly in it. But if you click on the date field in the middle of that thing and move it up just a bit, on just a single click, and then move it up to there, that's good. Now move your portal tool around again by clicking in the middle of it. It still is in it. Move the date up a little bit more so it's actually slightly outside. Like that. Right there. Okay, now clicking in the middle of your portal tool and move it. It's still moving. It's actually not supposed to do that. Move it all. Yeah, move it like out all the way and let it go. And then move it part way back in because I really want to show this breaking. Okay, that looks like it's in. And then move your tool around. And notice that the date field is not inside of your portal. So put your portal down below all that. Down, down, down. And then drag the date field correctly back into the middle so it's entirely in line. Now it's inside the portal, and now if you move the portal around again, it's back inside of it. So it's no obvious way to tell if a field is in or not in an object. But a really easy way to test it is by moving the whole object around. That is vexing to a lot of new FileMaker developers. And so I wanted to take a minute to display how that works. Okay, go to browse mode and let's actually see how the data shows here. So click exit layout or Control B to go to browse, or the layout menu to browse mode. There may be other ways, but those are the three that I know. Great. These are all the work orders for this customer. Except, are they all the ones? Anybody think that there's exactly that number?
There might be more.
Pardon?
There might be more work orders.
Yes, there might be more. What do we have to do to show more?
I don't know the menu, but some sort of options menu where you can like enable the scroll wheel.
Yes, exactly. So go back to layout mode on here. So click edit layout again. And then I'm going to let someone else drive in a little bit because you're probably sick of me. Double click in the middle of the work orders portal. So in that gray area, that is the portal. And if you double click, it brings up the control. Now, this is the thing we skipped past pretty quickly. But one of the things we really need to do, you're exactly right on it, allow vertical scrolling. Okay, does FileMaker allow horizontal scrolling of a portal? Anybody think?
That sounds interesting. I've never heard of it though.
It sounds super interesting. It's not a supported feature. It's a trick question. But I really wish it did it, but it doesn't. So the only feature, FileMaker only gives you a list from top to bottom. You cannot have data appear left to right. So there's tricks you can do, which we won't get to in this class, but that's how you do it. Okay, so now the scroll bar appears, but the scroll bar used a tiny bit of your horizontal space, so you have to make the portal a little bit wider, like so. It's perfect. You can either drag it out on the right or the left, and now you have a little bit of white space appearing. So go ahead and commit that change. Okay, database terminology. Committing a change, either on a record or on a layout, is done by either exiting the layout or going to browse mode, basically changing modes. FileMaker automatically saves everything you do as you do it. For data, for scripting, actually scripting you have to save. Calculations, everything is saved like right when you do it. There's not a lot of intentional commit commands. So the actual save Control S keyboard shortcut is pretty seldomly used. It's really only in scripting that you specifically save it. But in other areas, it just saves kind of as you go. And that's very different than the way other programs work. Okay, navigate from record to record here. By the way, notice that you now have a scroll bar on this one. And that's how you see all your other data. And now I'm going to introduce you to calculations, but I'm going to have someone else drive. Who's followed along with the same steps that we've just done? Anyone?
I have.
Xavier, why don't you take over screen sharing then?
Yeah.
And I'll have you present to the class the next part. So the next part is we're going to create a, before we can talk more about relationships, we're going to create a calculation. Because what I really want to know is I want to know the total of those hours. Wouldn't that be nice? So scroll from customer to customer on here. And we can see all those hours. Let's modify that field and make it right aligned. So go to layout mode. Actually, you don't do it from that. You do it here. So if you click on the hours field in your portal, you can go to the arrange. Actually, I think it's, yeah, you can either right click it and align. That's actually different. So aligning is done if you've got multiple things selected. So none of those ones is actually what we want. Click on that again and right click it. Text orientation. I don't ever actually do it this way. So none of those things is actually what we want. So in this particular case, all the features that we have don't give us quite what we want. However, the menu does do. So click on, go ahead and click cancel. With it selected, we have to go to the menus. And it's either going to be in the arrange menu or the format menu. Take a guess which one you think will be the right one.
Format?
Yeah, so format menu, align text. And then there's where you choose right align, which also has a keyboard shortcut. I don't know why that's not in the contextual menu, but it's not. So now if you go to browse mode, it'll right align it, which makes it much more natural. So now we're going to build our calculation. And I'm going to start by teaching you a best practice, which is not obvious. Okay, the normal way that you probably would think of to build a calculation, just like that first name and last name calculation that we did, is by going into Manage Database and then click on Fields and create it here. But that's not the way we're going to start it this time. So click Cancel on that. You should always cancel if you don't make a change, by the way. And we're going to go to another menu that actually I don't see running yet. So there's one other step that we have to all do to enable this. Go to the, I think it's Edit menu to Preferences. We have to turn on the Advanced Features in FileMaker. So Preferences, and there's a checkbox on the very bottom of Preferences called Use Advanced Tools. Okay, notice that when you have the menus that you have are File Edit View, Insert Format Record, Scripts, Window, Help. You do not have a menu called Tools. Some of you might, and that's because Advanced Tools are already on. So go ahead and click Quit FileMaker. So go to the File menu to quit.
I just...
And then relaunch it and open up your database. And now you have a Tools menu. Is everyone along with this? This is important.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, good. If anyone's not, then let me know, interrupt at any time, and we'll take a look at it. Okay, the Tools menu has a feature there called Data Viewer, and you're going to go ahead and open that up. As we've seen in some other areas, like for example, in Manage Database, there was 3 tabs for tables, fields, and relationships. The Data Viewer has 2 tabs: Current, which is what you see when you're in the middle of running a script, and Watch, which is the one that we're going to play with right now. The Data Viewer is a really good place to write and test calculations because it allows you to play with them with the record that you're looking at on the screen right behind it. So it's a subtly powerful feature, and isn't a basic thing per se, but it's a best practice, no question about it. So I wanted to take the extra effort to show you this this really, really cool feature. You're hovering over the green plus, which makes me very happy. Click on that. And this is your calculation widget, which is universal in FileMaker. Just do some simple math here. Type 2 + 2. Notice at the very bottom, it's calculating your result. So this actually will show you in real time either a simple math expression or math that you do on your database. So for example, put in, delete the 2 plus 2 and double click the email address field and then put an ampersand. Just type in an ampersand character and then choose like city. And notice that what's going to show you at the bottom is the email and the city. Of course, that doesn't really make sense, but this allows you to do that. Click monitor in the very lower right there. And then with this window still up, flip from record to record in your database. Notice that it's actually updating and it's showing you the calculation on the fly as you go through records. Perfect. Okay. Click plus again and add another calculation. And now we're going to actually explore some of our functions. Okay. This calculation window has 4 panes. The leftmost one is all of the data in your database. And by default, it's showing you everything in the current table, which is the customers table. But we can also actually see things in the work orders table. The second pane is the expression itself. That's where you can type 2 plus 2 or whatever you want to do. The third pane is super narrow. And that's the one that's actually to the left of that. It's the one that has your operators, quotes, parentheses, ampersand, paragraph, equals, not equals, greater than, less than, etc. Those are all your operators. And then the rightmost one, your function names. FileMaker has hundreds of function names, and they're sortable, and you can also view them by type. So click on the little graph icon next to the sort thing. That's where you can choose if you only want to see one kind. For example, click on that again and go to the one called, is there one called aggregate? Yeah, aggregate functions. What I want to do is I want to know the total of the hours of the work orders. And so there's a function called sum, double click it. And then see where it says sum field and it has some complex stuff in there. Just delete that whole thing, the entire thing. Actually, the whole entire everything. You're a step ahead of me because you actually did exactly what I wanted next, which is to just type it. So just type sum, S-U-M, and notice that it does a type ahead. And then where it says field, just delete that. And then double click on hours over on work order. So that's a lot of talking that I just did to get to a really simple calculation. And I love that you went down to see that it's actually adding up the total, 226.25, of the total number of hours for this customer's work orders. Click monitor, and we can see that it's actually going and adding up all of that stuff. So this gives us the ability to test that our function is working correctly before we do anything with it. So I find, I'll say it again, this is the best practice to actually start your calculations here, because go ahead and click on that again. You can see the result as you type it. And if you made a math error or put a parentheses in where it wasn't supposed to be or anything like that, you can see your result immediately without having to leave and come back. Okay, now that we actually know our calculation is perfect, select the entire expression. That's that whole line, and copy it to the clipboard. Control C. Then click monitor or cancel and close the data viewer window. Now we're going to go to the manage database. So file menu, manage database, or Control Shift D. And in the customers table, we're going to add a new field called total hours. Doesn't matter if it's a space or not, doesn't matter if it's uppercase or not, and its type is going to be calculation. By the way, we have not yet talked about one other type of field in here, which is summary, and that's the one we're going to do after this. Okay, so this one brings up total hours. And now we can just paste. So we already know our function works. I don't have to rewrite it. And if it was a really complex function that contained things like a case statement or a while loop or if then or JSON formatting or whatever, it's just really nice. We can just copy and paste it. In this particular case, the result is numbers. So we can just leave that alone. Click OK. And now we can add that to the layout. Look, it's already there, total hours, but it's in the wrong spot. So go to layout mode and move that field over to the bottom of the portal. And now if we go to browse mode, it should work. Okay. Question to which you should not know the answer. If we want to round this off so that we don't see 235.25, what are the two ways we can do it? Or two of the many ways, but I can only think of two.
There's maybe a function to round it up.
There is. So basically you're saying we could do it like as a function right at the data level?
Yeah.
Well, that's one way. What's another one? The other one.
I don't know.
Anybody else hazard a guess? Carly, Faith, Bill, Al, you guys must know the answer. I bet Al knows the answer.
No.
Well, you're going to now, because I'm going to tell you. I ask questions like that because I really want you to wrap your brain around stuff, because when it's painful because you are thinking about it and you don't know, it helps you remember. FileMaker has some features right in the layout that allow you to format text differently. So you can click on the hours, and we haven't explored way over to the right there. You have a little another pane, and that pane has 4 tabs. So in the very top, you have those 4 icons. So, and you've already clicked on the correct one. The rightmost one is data. And data has a whole bunch of features, but down near the bottom, it has some formatting features. And you can see it says format general. You can format this as a number, format it as a decimal. And you can show how many decimal places it's going to show. And you can just type 0. And that rounds it off. You can also put a 1000 separator in it. And so if there's a ton of hours, it can actually be a little easier to read. So you should click that box for 1000 separator. And then you can choose a custom format for 1000 separator. So for example, in a lot of the world, the 1000 separator is the decimal. And here in the US, it's a comma. And so they reverse them. I have no idea historically why that happened. It's probably the same dumb rule. While some places in the world you drive on the right and some places you drive on the left. It makes no sense at all. Because in all places in the world, the gas pedal's on the right. So go figure. Okay. Having changed that, now go up to browse mode. And you can see that it no longer has a decimal. And stop on one of those records. And then on one of them, go into like that record there, and the very top line that says 13, make it 1013. And then click out of it to commit it. And notice that at the portal line is not formatted to have a comma, but the total hours at the bottom is, which makes it a little easier to read. I'm going to show you one other cool advanced trick. Go to layout mode, and we're going to select 2 fields. So click on the total hours field on the bottom, not the label, but just the field. That's the label. That's the field. And then hold the shift key and click on the hours in the portal to the at the top. The hours, yeah, that one right there. Okay, now you've selected 2 objects. And what I want you to do now is align them to the right. So slowly, carefully, go to the Arrange menu on the very top. So File, Edit, View, Format, on the very, very top left, Arrange, and then Align Right Edges. What that will do is it will align a whole row of things perfectly, and there's keyboard shortcuts for that too. And then while they're still selected, go to the, you're actually already on the Data tab over on the right, and change it where it says Format. It actually now is very at the very bottom where it says Data Formatting. Notice that because there's multiple things selected, it doesn't really know what to do. So choose Format again and choose Decimal. And choose, actually uncheck the round function where it says fixed number of decimals, click it, and that will clear it. And then click where it, also the 1000 separator, click it and then click it again. Notice that the first time you looked at it, it had like a little square box in it. That means that there's multiple different settings in the fields that you've got chosen. And then unchecked and checked mean it's going to be consistent for all of them. Okay, so this is exactly where I wanted this to be. And then the last thing that I want you to do is to make sure that they're all right aligned. And that's actually not in this menu. It's back in the Format menu. And it's Align Text Right. Yeah, now if you click Control B or Exit Layout, now you've got a perfectly aligned field with a comma separator, and we're no longer rounding off. So if you switch, go to another one, and this one's not rounding. Let's take a look at the other way to round. Okay, go to Manage Database. Go down to Total Hours. And we're going to add a function, and we're going to wrap the entire sum function inside of the other function. Just type the word round before sum, not there, but over in your function, we're going to modify it. So put the cursor at the beginning of sum. Yeah. Okay, so what you did, so this is going to be a little tricky, so go really slow here. What the function needs to be is round, open parentheses, the other function, and then close parentheses. So delete number precision and all that, leave all that alone, and delete where it says number precision, and then delete the right parentheses character. This is tedious, but then you have to add one extra parenthesis. Perfect, you've done it exactly right. So you have a round function and then another function wrapped in the middle. So there's two sets of parentheses, and FileMaker super helpfully does not tell you which one is which. So other programming languages actually do that. But if you actually didn't have one of those parentheses there, at least FileMaker would not allow you to save it. But since you've got it right, go ahead and click OK. Oh, there's actually one other thing you haven't done yet. You haven't told it how many decimal places to put it in. So right there between the two parentheses on the right, you actually have to put how many decimal places you want to round it off to. 0. Okay, try to save on that. FileMaker won't allow you to do that because it needs a semicolon before the 0. Now it should work. So that was tricky, and that's a really good reason that we should have probably done that work in the data viewer, because then we would have seen it work immediately once we had it right as we typed our characters. That's okay though, go ahead and click OK. You know what, go back to that function and copy it to the clipboard, and we're going to go backwards. Select the whole thing. Copy. Cancel, cancel. Go to the Tools menu to Data Viewer. Click New and paste. Okay, move that over. Actually, right there's good. What if you change the 0 to 1? Now you can see it's rounding it off to 1 decimal place. What if you wanted to round this off to the nearest 10 rather than to the nearest 0? In other words, 235.3. But what if you wanted to see it like 230 or 240 instead of 235? Or 200 or something like that? You can round it off. What if you wanted to round it off something other than to the right of the decimal point, but to the left of the decimal point? Do you think that's possible? I'm going to take votes.
Yeah.
1 vote for yes. I need 1 more vote. Yes or no?
Yep.
That's 2 votes for yes. How do you think we do it?
I'm not sure.
It's not obvious.
Does it have to do with changing the semicolon, maybe?
Nope.
Nope.
That's a really good thought, though. You just make it -1.
Okay.
So you're rounding to -1 decimal places. What about -2 decimal places? What about -3? That's 0, because if you round up to the nearest 1,000, 200 is 0. So round it just to the to -1 for now, and then click monitor, and then flip from record to record, and we can see how different it is as you go through the records. Right, so you can see your 2 functions kind of working side by side there. So now we're really like playing with some calculations and seeing some different things. And these math ones are really good. Okay. The purpose of this lesson, though, is to talk a little bit more about fields and relationships. So I'm going to throw some things out to you in our simple little database that we have here, where we're tracking customers and work orders. Let's say that we wanted to also have quotes, and we wanted to track quotes that we give to this customer that may or may not turn into work orders. What's the best data structure to do that? How would you describe? Who can describe how I would do that?
Sorry, can you say that again?
I'm talking about some different examples of relationship types. And so we're going to talk about not only the, so we've got one-to-many relationships, many-to-many relationships, one-to-one relationships, and other special types, but those are the 3 main ones. So right now we have a relationship that exists that for this customer, Humboldt Grove, shows all the work orders for Humboldt Grove, which is basically all the times the customer called us and said, come out and do some work. Here's the number of hours I want you to do, and here's the date that the work gets done. And I also want to track when I give the customer a quote and they say, oh, I want to get some landscaping done or whatever. How many hours will it take to plant 4 ficus trees? And what will the cost be? And so I generate a quote for the customer, which is going to have things in it like the date the quote was generated, who the salesperson was, what the materials cost was, what the labor cost is going to be, and whether they accepted or didn't accept the quote. And maybe they required different versions of the quote. What's the data structure that I would be? How would I build that? Would I just modify the work orders table? Would I modify the customer table? Would I create a new table? Would I create 2 new tables? Describe the structure that it would be to make that work.
We would need a quote table.
Yes, that's the first thing you'd need is a quote table. Who can tell me what that would look like?
So I think you would need an ID for every record.
Yes, you would. I'm going to take over sharing. So you need a quote table. You need an ID for every record, which comes automatically. That's the primary key. That's the ID. What else do you need? I mentioned a couple. I mentioned quote date. And that's a date field. I mentioned labor cost and materials cost. What else?
Maybe like a location.
Location.
Like the place you're working.
I think also we probably need work description. There's one kind of glaring thing that's missing to me as an experienced database developer. That's present in the work order table. Who has a guess as to what that might be?
The customer number?
The customer number, exactly. Without the customer number, there is no way to link this quote to a customer. This ID is the ID of the quote. It is not the ID of the customer. And so in the work order table, we actually have two. We have the ID of the work order and the ID of the customer. My convention is usually to do them like this, ID customer. That's how usually I write them. But that's just a personal preference. I'll move that up here. Also, like the way I build it, customer number, I would just call ID, and that's a primary key. Okay, let's talk a second about primary key versus foreign key. In the customer table, the customer ID is the primary key. Interestingly, this is actually not auto-entered right now. So if I make a new customer in here, it doesn't actually get a key. And that means there's no possible way for them to link to work orders. So I have to, whoops, I just lost that screen. Did screen sharing? Here we go. So what I have to do here is I take a look at my maximum number, which is 47, and automatically enter my next customer ID as 48. So use the serial number feature and make these not editable. So the next time I make a customer, the ID is 48, and it should be impossible to ever have two customers with the same ID. There's another feature we talk about in the intermediate and the advanced class called a UUID, a universal unduplicatable ID, but we're not going to talk about that here. Okay, so if I flip through my customer records, all their numbers are kind of all over the map. It looks like this is sorted a strange way. If I make a new one now, it's actually called 48, and so this can be Acme Co. Manager John Smith, whatever. Sales rep, all the other information I want. So, okay, I had started, I'm going to take some of these things. Let's see. I'm going to move them. I'll get rid of some of this stuff. This I'll put down here. Actually, I'm going to delete that because I'm going to show you another thing in a minute. Customer sense, I'll move down here. And then I don't yet have my portal because you guys were building that. I didn't do it. So I'm going to rebuild this portal for work orders with scrolling. And I'm going to show the same three things you guys showed, which was the work order number, the date, and the hours. I can also put a label on those. Work order number. Control drag, control drag. If these are not aligned, I can select them all and then align them to bottom. And now they're all lined up. we'll get more into playing with layouts. So so now I have this working. Okay, this is my new customer, Acme, and I want to make this quote system now work. And so there's two things I need to do. I hope you guys are following along. We're coming up to another time for a break here shortly, but I have some content I definitely want to show, and this is going to get vexing, so follow along closely. So there's a couple things I need to do. One of them is, right now, if I wanted to add a new work order, I don't have the way to do that. So there's before I can even go to make a new quote, I have to show you a feature which we didn't yet show you, which is the ability to create a related record to add another one. So this has 3 work orders, but there's not a fourth, and I need to be able to make a fourth one. A really easy way to do that in FileMaker is if I go back to Manage Database, and in the relationship between customer and work order, if I double click on this little equal, it brings up the relationship modification screen. We didn't look at this at all. We just dragged from left to right. But there's these 6 checkboxes down here that have special features. And they basically are 3 that work to the right and to the left of the relationship. So you remember we talked about how it doesn't really matter if you've got right or left. But as a convention, you put the parent on the left and the child on the right. And so as a convention, if you're sitting at a customer and you want to be able to create a work order, you would check this box, allow creation of records. And if I do just that, now a blank line appears, which allows me to say, oh, on today's date, Control Dash, I'm going to have 20 hours. And on 9/7, I'm going to have 15 hours. Okay, question. Why am I not seeing a work order number appear?
I'm wondering because you're not generating it in the work order table.
Oh, you're so exactly correct. When a minute ago, I actually modified my structure in my customer table to automatically generate the ID, but I never did that in a work order table. So I have to actually go here and say the next work order number is going to be a serial number, and it's going to start at, I don't know, how about 70001. So 70,001 will be my next number, just randomly. Ideally, though, I'd really look at the, I don't want to duplicate numbers because that's definitely bad. You should never have a situation where 2 records can have the same ID because things will break. Okay, so now if I went in here and did this and say 9/6, I'm making these backwards, 8 hours. Now it's actually using that serial number. I'm going to show you a couple of other quick things here. I don't have the ability to delete lines, and I really want that. So I'm going to double click on this and say allow deletion. But then I need a way to delete. So I'm going to add a button. And the button's going to have an icon, and the icon is going to be delete. And the action is going to be delete portal row. So this is another lesson we're going to get to, but that's mainly tomorrow, actually. Wait, why did that not show up? Single stepped, searching from the menu, delete portal row with dialog on. That gives me the ability to delete those work orders that I created that don't actually have IDs. So a couple little quick steps there. So if I made another one for today for 23 hours, it shows up. Now I also didn't build my, if you guys were building, I didn't create my field yet to total the hours, but that's okay. We're not going to worry about that. Okay, now that I've shown you how to make a new record, I want to replicate that exact same thing for my relationship between customers and work orders. And I want to replicate that to customers and quotes. Here are the steps. ID to ID customer. So click and drag. By the way, if I had that wrong, if I clicked the wrong things, like just 2 random fields like this, I can double click on this and fix it by choosing ID to ID customer here and change. So, and then you can also have what's called a multi-predicate relationship, where it can also be manager equals quote or something like that. You can have multiple things must be true for the relationship. Generally, don't do that, but you can. There's sometimes really good reasons for it. Okay, so now that I've done that, the one other thing I want to do is I want to check this one box to allow creation of records. And then we're not going to talk about these other checkboxes. Delete, but except briefly to talk about what they do. If this box is checked, then when I delete a customer, it automatically deletes all of the work orders, or in this case, quotes for that customer. And the last checkbox would sort the records. Anytime I'm looking at a list of them, it would sort them by a certain way. You should almost never use sort and very rarely use delete. There are better ways to do both of those things, but at some point in the long history of FileMaker, there wasn't better ways to do it, and so these features were added here. So one of the things I'll be talking about as we go are features that are sort of no longer valuable in FileMaker. We remember on the layout tools, there was a couple of them I said, just ignore everything to the right of a certain place. Okay, so now I have 2 relationships, one to work orders and one to quotes. And I want to display that one on my layout. So here's what I'm going to do. First, I'm going to make this shorter because I want to just show like 6. And then I'm going to make another portal below it. To quote. And just like before, I'm going to show just a couple of fields, the date, labor, and material. And maybe location, but not work description because it's too long. And I'm not going to show the ID. Honestly, I don't know that the work order ID is really useful here. But, you know, the date and the hours are useful. Okay, now if I want to, for this customer, these don't have labels, so I'm going to make some labels. Quote date, location, labor, material. To change the name of a label, you can just click it once and start typing. Or you can double click and select, but it's faster, just click it once and start typing. So quote date. Today, let's call it Portland. 350 in labor and 700 in materials. And that created a record in my quote table. Okay, if I navigated to my quote, would the quote have an ID? And would the quote have an ID for the customer, which is 2? Who wants to hazard a guess?
Can you repeat, please? I didn't.
So I just, in this little field, I made really simply a record in the table 400 and 600. Okay, so my question is, just by creating a line right here, I'm actually creating a record in a related table. In that related table, if I navigate to the form view of the new quote table, what are the IDs going to say? What are they going to be populated with? Is it going to actually have even though I don't actually see it here, a record that shows this quote is linked to customer 2?
Yes.
And also,
yes.
is it going to have a primary key? So you think yes is the answer?
Yeah.
Who else wants to take a vote? Bueller. I'll put you out of your misery. The answer is yes, you're correct. So if I go to my quote table, I'll actually see these 2 records get created. And I think this is a little bit of the magic of FileMaker, honestly, because it just takes care of it automatically. Now, the ID field is not on this layout, but the primary key, the ID field, is really long and ugly. This is that UUID that I talk about. So this is a gigantic serial number that's really, really good for databases to communicate with themselves behind the scenes, but you would never want this to appear on a place where a customer could see it, for example. But these are great because you can apply them before or after the fact, and they just kind of work without a lot of hassle. So if I navigate back to customers and went to some other customer, and I make a new quote for, say, I don't know, 95, location Maine, 500, 1200. If I go to my quote table, I've automatically created a record with the other information. So that automatic, the feature by checking this box, allow creation of records, what that does is when you create a record, it automatically populates that foreign key. So we've talked a little bit about primary keys and foreign keys, but I don't think I really made you guys define what those are. And it's fairly simple. A primary key is the unique identifier of a given record in a given table. So it can't be, it shouldn't ever be, I would even go so far as to say it can't be duplicated in order for it to be valid. And a foreign key connects to the parent record and can be duplicated. So it's possible to have multiple quotes all have the same customer. Just like we saw in work order, we had quite a few work orders for the same customer. And we can also have quite a few quotes for the same customer. That's perfectly good. Okay, let's go one step farther down and then we're going to take our break. I want to build a little bit more detailed looking quote. So I actually want to build a table that shows me the detail for the labor and a detail of the materials, right? So I'm going to build a new table called quote material and quote labor. So the material, I'll just call this ID. This actually needs a field called quote ID. And it should be spelled correctly. And that connects the material line item, if you will, to the quote. Question while I'm building this. So think about this for a second and then hazard a guess. Does this table of material also have to have a foreign key for the customer ID while I'm building out these fields? So I need the quote. I need the, so this is material, so I need like part number, cost, sell, quantity, sell, or just quantity, and total, which is a calculation, which is sell price times quantity. Okay. Who has an answer to my question? Do I also have to have the customer ID in this table?
I don't think so, because the quote ID connects it all.
You're correct. So I've built out the material table. I'm going to copy all these fields to the clipboard and go to my labor table. And so I'll still need the quote, but I don't need a part number for the labor. I need like labor hours or like not even that, labor type. I don't really care about the cost of the labor hours. So the cell is going to be the rate and the quantity of the hours. And then like labor type. Oh, I already have that. And then total is the rate times the quantity. So now I have two basically subtables. And then this is how that's going to look on the graph. So these tables get created and they're going to be, I'm just going to grab any two fields and double click because it's going to be the quote ID connecting to the quote ID. With allow creation. And the quote labor adding to quote labor. I might have done that other one wrong. No, it's right. So it's the ID of the quote going to ID quote in both places. And both of them should have the checkbox for create. Okay, brief pause. From here to here is a one-to-many relationship. One customer, many work orders. From here to here is a one-to-many relationship. One quote or one customer, many quotes. From here to here is a one-to-many relationship. For any quote, 0 or more lines for material. What's the nature of the relationship from here to here? I can't select it correctly. There you go. What's the name for the relationship from customer to material line items of a quote?
Many to many.
Correct. So not one-to-one, not one-to-many, but many-to-many. And that's because there's a join table. So in all many-to-many relationships in FileMaker and most databases, there are exceptions, but generally, if there's a join table in between two many-to-many or two one-to-many relationships, then the nature is that is a many-to-many relationship. It's a little tricky and not obvious. Does anyone have questions about that before we continue? We're going to create a couple more examples of these as we go. But I'm going to do one very brief thing and then we're going to take another little break. Okay, so back on my customer screen, I've got my work order. I can choose my work order date, 9/1, secondary location, and then I'm going to have labor and material. So on my quote entry screen, I'm going to make two portals. One of them is going to be labor, and one of them is going to be materials. Quote labor, which is going to have labor type, rate, quantity, and total. And materials. Notice, by the way, when I draw my portal, when I get right to this edge, a little line appears telling me that it's going to be perfectly aligned with the object above it. So as you move objects around, we're either creating things or moving things, the little lines that appear are great to tell you how you're working. Okay, so this one's going to be material, and it's going to show the part number, the cell price, the quantity, and the total. But I think I'm going to put quantity first. I'm going to show 3 lines on each of them. And click the allow scrolling, yes. And you see some other checkboxes, alternate row state, some other stuff like that. That's more advanced stuff. Okay, so now on a given work order, I can say, I can't remember the names of the fields. Labor type, rate, quantity, total. So this is going to be labor type, I don't know, standard, or like plant tree. Four at 200, clean up. 2 at 100. And then material, this is going to be part number, quantity, cell, and total. So let's call this ficus. 4 at 150. And that, notice this is calculated, so I can't modify it. And so this would be a kind of a good example of a work order. Now, there's more things that I would need to do, right? So I don't have the math in place yet to add up the cost of these here on the quote, nor do I have the math to add up any of that stuff on the customer work order screen here. So these fields now are broken because they need to be calculations. I'm going to be sharing this file so you can play with it. So I'll do those calculations really quickly while we take a break, but let's take another break to kind of let all this stuff sink in, and we'll come back in 5. I'll do that work if you want to watch. I'll leave the thing going and just kind of go through those calculations really quickly so you can see that, and that way it'll be on the recording. But I'll turn off my camera and mic right now.
Is there any way you could share like a full screen of the relationship tab with everything expanded? I fell behind at some points and I just, yeah. Like, can you take a screenshot of everything expanded?
Well, this whole thing is going to be available. The file,
okay.
Yeah. I'll post this one on the server. Actually, part of tomorrow is the sharing aspect of this, like after we have it in there. So we're actually going to put this file on the server. You know what? I'll do that at the end of class. So if you can see, you can actually see that process and then talk about it again tomorrow.
Okay, sounds good.
What's involved in actually putting a database onto a FileMaker server so that it's shared. And then anyone who wants to see that part can actually access the shared database that I'm making right now. I'm going to heat water for tea, and I'll be right back to make those relationships. Okay, I quickly just went in and created some calculated fields to add the totals up for work orders, which we'd already done in class, and for quotes. But one of the things I haven't yet done is I haven't really given kind of a nice way to go edit a quote for a customer. So we created a button on the previous one to allow a deletion. But another thing that's kind of cool is a way to do navigation. So I'm gonna, rather than having to delete on here, I'm gonna change this to, I don't know, like a right arrow, and say single step, use a different calculation, which is gonna be go to related record. And this will say, from this customer, go to the quote and use the layout, the quote detail layout, and show only the related record. And so with one little click there, I can go to this secondary quote here, and it takes me to that quote where I can then say, oh, now let's put these line items on there. So I need like labor type. You know, I need labels for these two: rate, quantity, total, and then the same ones for down below: part, quantity, cell, total. And then I'll do one other trick here. I'm going to use a tab panel with two tabs, labor and parts. And so this one here is labor. And I can grab all of this whole thing and stick it onto the labor tab. Nope, it didn't quite fit. So remember that thing I talked about before of it has to actually be wide enough to fit. So this wasn't quite wide enough. So now it is. And then I'll do the same thing for parts, but first I have to label those. I should definitely format those a little bit more precisely, but for quick and dirty, we can get this done. So a tab panel allows you to save some screen real estate by changing from the labor to the parts. And then I'm going to add a third one called extra. And on the extra one, I'm going to put in two other fields that I have. So I have a field called quote extra description and amount. So if there's like some other sort of a surcharge that wasn't really precisely labor or material, that can be part of the math. And then I want to put the total price of the quote on here. So the quote oh, do I actually have that work description quote? Yeah, quote total right here. So I can have subtotals and the entire quote total on here pretty easily. So, for example, labor type install 100 at 1 plus part number ficus 200 at 1 plus a cleanup fee, which really could be labor, or let's call it travel. And because this is a customer that's far away, it's going to be $50. So that's going to now add up that math because I built a field in here that says the quote total is the labor cost plus the material cost plus the extra cost. So very, very simple math. And these are structures you're going to see a lot in many of the databases that you look at. Now, if I navigate back to the customer, I'll show a little bit of advanced feature. I'm going to get rid of this ID because we don't need to see it. But a minute ago, I created a button that said go to related record. And so I want another one kind of like that. That's going to go back to the customer. So it's going to be another go to related. And it's going to go from the work order, or sorry, the quote, back to the customer on the customer details screen. So this one function, the go to related record, is pretty powerful. And this allows me navigation back and forward to a customer. I can also show, just like I showed in a portal, data on the customer screen for a given work order. I can also show data on the work order screen, or I'm sorry, a quote screen, with the customer's information. So like the customer name. So this gives me that navigation. So as I'm flipping through records, and I'm looking at this record, whoops, I put something on here accidentally at the time. So if I wanted to create a quote for a certain date for like this main location, and I want to, it automatically puts today's date. I need to click this to navigate away from the customer, Walnut Square. Goes to the quote screen, allows me to put in labor, 150 an hour for 10 hours, plus also parts, or if I want. And then with this button here, I go back to the customer. So this is kind of standard navigation that we're going to definitely play with more tomorrow. Okay, we have half an hour left. Everybody's with me? I hear silence.
Yep.
I'm still here.
I want to show the self relationship next. So you can kind of see how that works. That's one other type of relationship that we have. That's going to take very small amount of time. While I do that, be thinking of any other questions about parts of this that don't make sense. So I'm going to do two things. I'm going to do that same tab panel thing. Not a mile wide though. For quotes and work orders and additional details. Wow, that did get a mile wide. So quotes are going to go here. Work orders are going to go here. And then some of the other information that I don't necessarily need to see, like I don't need to see the address all the time. So you can make your layouts much better by putting the smallest amount of information as possible on the main screen. So like email address, it's just not, it's, some of the details you just don't need to see all the time. Like the customer, the manager, maybe not even the phone number. I use a phrase called above the fold, which is kind of borrowed from newspapers. Like you have a line on your screen that's either imaginary or real. And everything above there are things that you see all the time, super important, can't do without. And then everything below, you could put into areas where it might take you one extra click to get to the detail. Maybe all this stuff is just not that important. And then maybe among this stuff, some of it might be super important. So I could put it like up here and very, very large. We're getting into some of the design parts of it right now. But like, the ID really maybe should be bold. And very large. So I can put that like so and format it differently too. And the customer name also may be bold and also could be very wide. Oh, total quote. That should go inside the portal. And then I made this accidentally way too wide. There we go. So when you make a tab panel, it's really important that it fit everything that's on there. If I make this too narrow to fit this stuff, then things get cut off. They don't get deleted, but they're just not going to be visible. Okay, so now this is functional, right? It allows me to create a quote, create a work order, and also show additional data. And it's just a little bit cleaner to go kind of through. Okay, I think I asked you guys to come up with some questions. Drop some questions on me in terms of how any of this stuff works, and we'll go through things before I get to the rest of the content. I know you guys have questions. It's a lot of silence.
I'm honestly following along pretty well. I just I've been trying to keep up, but it's hard to do that.
This last step, I did not intend for you guys to keep up. So this was like being able to take a look at it and be able to replicate stuff on the fly.
Okay,
so you
good.
can do a little bit of homework on that.
I figured
yeah, I was going very.
anyways.
Pardon?
I figured like this is all in the video anyway, so I should just like
it's
stop.
In the video. Plus also this file will be online for you to take things from. But yeah, those last steps, I definitely did not intend to you guys to follow along as I was doing it because that was turbo speed.
Okay, yeah, I'm also following along pretty well too, except for I also got behind because I'm very, very slow with making the portal and everything. I'm like, oh God, I'm so slow.
Well, these are all new concepts. And one of the other things I really encourage you guys to do is break things. And then I wanted to give you some tools to understand like how, like when it's broken, how to know what's going on, like that exercise we did of putting a field outside of a portal so it didn't move around correctly. Yeah, I think that's really important stuff to see. The layout stuff was really supposed to be part of tomorrow, but I think it's just so important that I wanted to get it covered today as well. And so tomorrow will be a lot of layouts and a little bit more on the data modeling, kind of any other questions you guys have. There's some other content that I want to talk about directly related to the fields and some of the other features that we have on each field. Any other, if there's no questions, maybe I'll just go ahead and show that stuff right now. And actually, probably the most effective way to do it is to have one of you guys present. Can someone take over?
I can take over again.
Okay. Let's talk auto enter for a second. So if you made a new work order, scroll down to the bottom of your list of work orders. Yeah, actually, like right there is good. So you can use the little scroll bar elevator thingy. Okay, so if you click on the one and type in the last field to the right, 7, like for 7 hours, and then hit tab. Okay, so it did not default to today's date. It did give it a correct ID number, but it did not default the date.
Yep.
Let's fix that. So go to Manage Database. And then double click on the work orders table. And then in the date field, double click on that and make it creation date. But in this case, you want to allow it to be edited. So we're not going to click the box on the bottom that says prohibit modification. And so one thing that I wanted to show is that. So go ahead and click OK and OK. And then now scroll to the bottom again. And this time make 9 hours and tab. And notice that it puts the date in. So it saves us that one extra click of the date. Convenient, right? Okay, go back to Manage Database. And let's take a look at a couple of other things that exist in that work order table. Let's see. So double click on any field, like the date field. And notice that we've got some other features here, right? So we've got an auto enter, creation modification. You can automatically enter a serial number. Looked up value is extremely rarely used. So down at the bottom, you have a thing called looked up value. Just ignore that one because it's old. The second tab over is validation. These are things I generally recommend against using because if you use them at the data level, they can be very confusing to the user when an error message comes up. So for example, click cancel, and on the hours field, type click the checkbox for not empty. So require a value in hours, and then just click OK and click OK. And scroll down to the bottom and then don't type in the hours field, type in the a date of 9/7 and then tab. And then tab again. And then click out of that record. It says hours is defined to require a value. Do you want to allow this? Revert, yes, no. I hate this dialog box. I think it's just really confusing to the user because tell me what will happen if you click revert record, for example. What do you think will happen?
It won't let the record register.
Yeah, I think it actually, in this case, is just going to delete it, which is not what the user expects. And then you've got other choices, yes, no, like allow this value. What happens if you click no? Click no. I actually don't really even know what will happen. Like, so you're left at a place where you're not where you thought you were. And it's just stuck until you actually click yes. And the only way out of it is to click yes, and then you can actually type in the hours. So validation is better done via scripting or conditional formatting or some other way. Okay, let's fix what you just did, and we're going to take a little bit more of a tour, and then I'm going to have you do it the right way because I just can't allow you to do it the wrong way. So go back to Manage Database and go to the work orders table and then hours, and then uncheck that box. While we're here, take a look at a couple of other things you can do. So you can require that it be unique or existing or in a certain range, like for example, the only valid range could be like, between 1 and 10 or something like that. You can validate by a calculation. So the next tab over from validation is storage. And this is kind of a special use thing. Global fields we're not going to get into, but those are super useful for programming when you really get into scripting and some things like that. A global field, rather than storing a value for every single record in a table, for every single row in a table, stores one value no matter what. And it's unique to each user. This is very unique to FileMaker. FileMaker actually allows you to put globally stored fields at the data layer as opposed to in the user interface layer. So it's good and bad, but I find them to be very useful. The last tab over is a specific thing for Japanese language. So I've never actually used that because I don't speak Japanese. So that's a special purpose kind of a thing. So go ahead and click OK, because that fixes that. And then click OK again. And let's talk about how we would require that hours not be empty. And here's how I recommend you do it. Go to layout mode, and there's another feature that was on my list to show, which is conditional formatting. So if you right click on the hours inside the portal, there's a thing called conditional formatting halfway down. This is very similar to Excel. Click Add, and this has some choices. And so you see on the bottom where it says value is between, choose it to say is empty. So if the value is empty, then you want to make the fill color safety yellow. So click fill color and then choose safety yellow, which is, yeah, that one or one of those ones right there. So, and then click OK. And then what's going to happen is if you go back to browse and scroll down to the bottom, you'll see that some of them are missing a value. And so until you've actually put something in, it's going to be safety yellow. One of the things I really don't like about that is your blank line. So your very last line there is actually not a record. So that's actually, it shouldn't be showing like that. On the line where you have 6 hours, a few lines above that, just click the 6 and delete it. And then tab out. Now it shows you, hey, you need a value here. So this is the way that I prefer to have the user do something that you want them to do, is rather than showing a confusing dialog box, use a really clear user interface widget to show an error. Okay, here's another thing that you could do. Go back to layout mode and right click on that same hours field and go to conditional formatting and click add again. And then choose where it says value and say is negative. Not formula is more advanced because that's definitely advanced. Let's see, I think it's not between equal to, greater than, less than or equal to 0. So if it's less than 0, then you can say text color. Click on the text color and then make it like a bright red. And so this will put multiple different constraints on it. So let's say you had a user who just did a typo, and let's say that the one you're going to fix the one, any one of those lines, and type in -3 or anything like that. Yeah. Now you can see it shows red because it's like, hey, you really sure this is right? You might even do more than that. You might even make it bold. Now you might actually validly have a reason, like refunding hours. And so you don't want to prevent it straight up. You just want to highlight that, hey, this is a negative number, so you should definitely know about that. So it's another kind of a good thing to think about is, you know, what do you want to make possible? So if you use that validation feature and you say it's, you know, this field can never be a negative number, that might be an error because there might be a really good reason for you to have that field be a negative number. So those are some things I wanted to show. Let's go back to conditional formatting. And then go on hours and then click add again. And then you hovered over another thing, which is the value where it says value is, choose formula. And then click specify over to the right. This is the calculation dialog. So you can have some sort of a more involved calculation to highlight the line in certain situations. For example, if the work order is today, so we're looking at the field which is the hours field. But if it's today, then I want to show it's like, hey, by the way, this is super important because this is today's work that you just did. So delete everything where it says self. And then we're going to say where it's just customers over in the top left, way above that. Yeah, there. You're going to change it to work order date equals, and there's a function that we haven't looked at yet, which is called get current date. So type get and then open parentheses, CUR, and then it will pop down to current date. So if the work order date is today, get current date, click OK. Then we're going to do something different. We're going to say bold it. And also the fill color is going to be like a really light green. Probably a couple down below that. Because that one's going to be like a bolder color. It's going to be really hard to see the text on it. Okay, so now take a look at, so now we have 3 different functions on there. And yeah, there's one there, that's 9/8. So you can say, hey, by the way, this is today. So if you change the date to 9/9 and then tab, it will no longer be formatted. And if you change any of those records, like the blank one, 70,001 to 9/8, then yeah, that shows up. Now, right now, it's only showing up like on that one field, but you can also copy that same formatting to the whole line to kind of call attention. So conditional formatting can be a really useful feature. There's another pretty cool feature, which is conditional visibility. It's kind of related to that. This is kind of down the road more of layout design compared to calculation things. But let me show you that one as well. So go to layout mode, and then choose city, state, and zip, and also their labels. You can just draw a box around them all. Yeah, and then right-click on any one of them. You know what? It's actually not right-clicking on it. It's another way you have to do it. So just select them again. Okay, it's over in the data tab, which is already selected. Way over on the right, there's a thing that says hide object when. Right there. Click the pencil tool on hide object when. And what you want to do is you want to have the city, state, and zip fields be just straight up invisible if the address is empty. So type in is empty. This is a function name. And then double click the address. Not city, but address. Yes, and then click OK. And then go to browse mode. Okay, so delete address 900 Hyde Street. And when you tab out, all the fields are just invisible. It's like, why would you show the city field if there's no address? So this makes the layout cleaner because it only shows you the stuff that you need once you actually put the first part in. So type in 123 Main Street and hit tab. Now all of a sudden the address fields appear, right? So it's like, oh, okay, you've given me the first part. Now I know I'm going to show you the rest. There's some really curious and good ways to use that, but these are some good features. So those 2 features work very much hand in hand. Conditional formatting and conditional visibility both use very simple calculations, which we've looked at. So again, you can write calculations in the data viewer to test them, and then copy and paste them to the other areas. So we've looked at the calculation dialog box in field formatting or field structure. So like a simple first name plus last name, adding a summa field so you can add everything together like your total hours. Calculations for formatting, like bold it if it's today's date, and calculations for visibility. And those are 4 of the areas of the many, many areas that calculations can be used. that's actually all my content for the day, which is perfect because we've got 2.5 minutes left. Oh yeah, there's one other type of relationship, but I think I'll just wait for that until tomorrow. That single, the self relationship that shows you a list, but that's a 5-minute thing we can take a look at tomorrow. I'll answer any questions for the next 20 minutes if you've got any other questions. And if you don't, then I'll go through the lesson after our closing time to show you how to upload a database to a server. And then anyone who wants to stick around for that can get information on like what it, how do I put my database on the server so that all of you guys can actually see the work that I've already done with all the extra fields that I created in my copy. So let's see, I'll go ahead and close the official part and say thank you very much for sticking with me today for all the stuff that we've done. And then move to the next part, which is questions and the other content. So fire away with questions, please.
Well, I've got one question. So the conditional, what we've just done with the red background and all, you said that
yes.
I could copy it to every field.
Yeah, you can. So
all exactly. I'll share again.
Oh, okay.
How exactly would I copy that?
Yeah, here's how you do it. So go back to layout mode. Well, in this particular case, it's a little trickier. So right click on your hours calculation and go to conditional formatting. Okay, you have two conditions which you probably don't want to copy, but one of them that you do, which is the if today's date thing. So copy your calculation part there.
Just that.
To the clipboard. And then click OK or cancel. And then select the date and the work order number field. And then right click and go to conditional. Then click add.
Okay.
And then formula. And then paste. And then here's where you have to manually choose the other thing. So you have to manually click bold. That's actually text color. And then fill color is what you want. Isn't it? I think it's fill color, not text color.
Yeah. And
then you have to remember the specific green that you did because it could be different. And so it's not quite perfect. So if you do them all at once, it works perfectly, but it's a little, yeah. Is that, there you go. It's a slightly different color green.
Okay, thanks.
But that's good enough. Yeah, that's kind of an easier way to do that.
So I have a small question too. When you're making a portal and you like have your fields in there, is there, sorry about that. Is there any way to like auto make the labels on top? Because I just find it a little annoying that you have to make them afterwards.
Yes and no. I'll show you that. So right when you make the portal, there's not a way because like right when I go here, I choose my fields and it doesn't give me any other thing for the formatting. So it just shows it as they are. However, if you add them after the fact, so I'll turn on this left panel and go to fields. So let me add another portal. And let's say I'm going to add another work orders portal right here. I'm just going to choose work orders and not choose fields. Okay, then I'm going to go over here and say, oh, okay, from the work orders portal, I want team lead date and hours. And then here is my field placement and label. So here I can say I want them to be on a line, and then I want the label to be above it. And so now if I drag them out, also I can say what the edit style is. So I can choose some other things. Now when I drag out this one here, they will have labels.
Ah, okay, that's pretty cool.
But unfortunately, it also made them really wide. They don't fit. So I have to kind of, do some other surgery here. But that's how you do it. So
okay, well, that's better than individually making them.
It is, yeah. Although usually what I do is, yeah, copy and paste. I usually, drag and then type. It's pretty fast, but not perfect. Yeah, and then yeah, there's a bunch of little tricks like that. We didn't get into themes yet either, but we'll talk about that tomorrow. Styles, which is a really important part of it. Any other question? I'm going to show then how to upload this database to the server. So if I close this, if I open up FileMaker, one of the choices is open hosts. I think all of you guys have environments that have a FileMaker server, and this shows these files. So I already have one called beginner training, but I want to take the file that I made. I guess it's training demo is what I called it. I really need a better name for it. I think I'll give it a better name. Improved training. Okay. Improved training. Now, in order to host it, I have a couple things that I have to do first. I can't just put this file online right away because there's some security requirements that FileMaker has. So one of them is I have to have a real security. So if I go to the security area, I can't just have a file that has an auto open password. So I have to make an actual account for me, right? So I'll make an account for Matt. I'll set up my password, which is the word training. Wait, what did it just say? It tells me it's weak, and I know it is. It's an active account. It's full access. And then I'm going to duplicate that account and make a couple of other ones, right? I'll make a Susan. And then on all the other ones, I'm going to require the password change. And I'll make accounts for each of you. I think you go by Phil, not Philip. And Al, you go by Al, not Alan, don't you?
Yeah, I do, but it doesn't really matter.
Okay. So these accounts all exist, and they're all full access. And the password for all of them is the word training in lowercase. And in all cases, it's going to require the password be changed next time you open up the file, and I turn off guest access. So that's just kind of your basic security situation. Okay, I'm going to close the file and reopen it, and it should force me to change my password. So the first time you log on, it'll look like this. So I'll set up a different password, and that's the one that will now get used when I log on. Okay, the next thing I have to do is I have to go to File Options and turn off this automatic login as admin, because that's a default. And also I'm going to require version 19.0 to open the file. And I'm going to switch to the customer screen upon login. And I can do some other things too, like I can change the icon, which is cool. So I'll use like a health icon. I don't know. Oh, that's dumb. How about tasks? And so there's a couple of other things that are there. Let's see. The last one is I have to go to sharing. And I have to choose what the security is going to be. So improved training can be opened by all users. And that's it. So now I'm ready to upload this file to the server. And so I go back to sharing, and there's a choice for upload to host. It has to close it. And then now it's going to connect to the server. Let's see. I think I have to copy and paste my password. You don't have access to the server, but I do. So this will go into the database folder. And then there's the files ready to upload. So this upload step will put the file, should just take seconds to go up there. And then now it's on the server, so now you can all see it, right? So if you just go to open remote hosts, you should all see the improved training file, and you should all be able to log into it right now. And then I'm going to change my name and sharing. I can also see whether you guys have or have not logged in, because when I click on your account, the require password will uncheck automatically once you've actually set your password. So that's a best practice when you put a new file online, is to check this box and then determine whether the user has actually changed their password. Let's see. Oh, I think this is like the first default record. Yeah, it doesn't actually have anything in it. Yeah, work orders is what most of them have, so we should change these tabs. So now all the work that I do from this point on in the training is going to be on this hosted file. And we can all actually be in this file at the same time. And because that's the normal way that development is done. So that's kind of a better way to do it. Who's still with me? You guys are sticking around past the end date.
I'm still here.
It's great.
Is there a way to like import the file? So let's say I could take the file and do some modification on my own.
Yes. So you can actually get, I wasn't really prepared to show this, but the FileMaker admin, this is actually the perfect time after class, right? The admin console, what's the name of the server? Server.training.direct. I think it's, yeah. It's gone from the clipboard. So this is the interface for the admin console. So this is what runs the server, and in here there's a databases area. Oh, that's interesting. So it's not really working right now. So this actually should be showing all of the databases, which I can then take offline if I wanted to. But for some reason, it's not working, but it should be showing me these. And so here you would be able to go in and close the database that I just put in and take it offline, do work on it, and then re-upload it later on. I'm sorry I can't show you that. I'll have to check with them and see why that's not working, but that should normally you would actually see all the databases showing up there. Also from here, you can run backups and change server configuration settings, turn on other features, check the SSL certificate, and then also see the dashboard of like what other users are actually connected. And so this is definitely not working because I'm connected and it's not showing me as connected. So once in a while, this just gets shows old information, and that's what's happening now.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'll just log off of here because it's not really showing me anything. But yeah, the feature certainly exists, and your server would work normally for uploading and downloading files. I actually generally recommend to do all your development on a hosted file on a server. I think it's just better. The server automatically handles backup, and so like it without you having to think about it, it's maintaining multiple copies of the database, and that's definitely a good thing. You have less to worry about. It also protects the file from damage. So if FileMaker on your computer crashes, or if your computer goes to sleep or something like that, it could potentially do damage to a database. But if the file is hosted, it's very rock solid. The server protects the file and prevents bad things from happening to it. So it's good. Another reason to do development on a hosted file is you can always see if performance is good or not. So if you make some feature change that works really well when the file's local on your super fast computer, but doesn't work well if the file's on a server hosted halfway across the world, you can see that right away, and you become a better developer because all of your development is happening with the users in mind of what their speed is like as they work. So that's a good thing. Are you guys able to access the file online by going to hosts?
What's
Oh yeah, you know this.
what's the password that I?
Well, it's the server address is actually what you need. You might.
Yes.
Yeah, because you probably don't see it if it's local.
Oh, he set
I
it
think
to training for everybody.
Okay, it's training. Okay, thanks.
I'm
Yeah,
going to sign off. Thank you very much. I'll see you tomorrow, but I'm teaching a class in 2 minutes.
Okay, thanks very much. I'll see you.
All right, bye. Bye, everyone.
So when you're on this screen, which is the host screen, you probably have to click plus and add the server address, which is long. It's server.training.directimpactsolutions.com.
Yeah, well, I already had that. I just needed the password to log in.
Yeah, so if you click it once, it should actually just show all your database. Does it not do that?
No, I mean, like I'm in right now. I just needed the password for the improved training. Yeah.
Yeah, the password for improved training is the word training in all lowercase, and the username is your first name.
Yeah.
Yeah, TRAINANG. And then you should be in. Did that work?
Yeah, I'm in.
Okay, good. I'm really looking forward to getting to all the other topics tomorrow. That should be not enterable in browse mode. There's so many more things to cover. Borders, padding. Talk a little bit more about relationships. Talk about the tab, 2 different types of tab panels. Talk about the button bar and how it's definitely the better way to do it. And that's one more use for the calculation. Themes and styles. Value lists for like radio buttons and drop downs. And so tomorrow we'll really nerd out about a lot of the layout to build something that looks more like this. So this is kind of a more slick thing. It's got a logo. You can have photos in here for the customer. Yeah, just kind of a much nicer, more professional look.
Matt,
So I will see you all tomorrow morning.
Matt, can I ask you a question?
Yes, you can.
Either today or tomorrow, can you explain what you meant by the many-to-many and many-to-one for
Yes.
relationships?
I can do that right now. So a one-to-many is your kind of basic relationship, and that means one record in one table can have many records in the other table. So one customer can have any number of work orders.
Okay.
So, and that's one-to-many. So one-to-one would be one customer can only have one record in a certain table. And we don't actually have a one-to-one relationship here. But an example of that one might be if you had a table of people and a person could either be an employee or a customer or a vendor. And so the main person table would have all the basic information for the person, like first name, last name, date of birth, blah, blah, blah. Then only if they're an employee, they would have a record of the employee table, which would have things like hire date, termination date, rate of pay, stuff like that. Only if they're a customer would they have like customer acquisition date, customer type, terms. And only if they were a vendor, it would have other vendor specific features. So that would be an example of a one-to-one relationship where you would never have a record, you would never have more than one record in the employee table for a person. It would be one-to-one. And that's a little bit more obscure, but that's a one-to-one. And a many-to-many, which is the other, which is common, kind of like one-to-many, is when you have a join table in between two one-to-many relationships. So one customer can have any number of quotes, and one quote can have any number of material line items. And so the relationship between customer to quote material is many-to-many. Because
okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's a stack of two one-to-manys.
Okay.
Good
Yeah,
question. Any other questions?
No, I actually have to run right now, so just saying thanks, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.
Yeah, we're way over time. I appreciate you guys stick around.
Yeah,
Bye.
All right.
I'll head out too.
All right, I'll see you guys tomorrow.
All right.
See you tomorrow.
Bye.
Thank you very much. See you all tomorrow.
All right, thank you.